All right, welcome in everyone. My name is P.H. Irwin, a communications coordinator here at SAANYS, and I welcome you to another SAANYS Pro Learning session. Today's Power Hour webinar is titled Mentoring Moments, Onboarding and Hiring of New Teachers for Success. And as we begin, please remain muted, but feel free to use the chat room throughout the session for any questions, and our presenter will get to you. Also, please be aware that this session is being recorded, and you can find it on the SAANYS YouTube channel after the session. And now I will turn it over to Karen Bronson, SAANY's Director of Professional Learning.
Thanks so much, PH, and welcome everyone. Thank you for being with us here today. Our power hours have been so well received this year. We've had wonderful reactions and responses to them. We always try to pick titles that we think our members will benefit from, and today is certainly no exception. We're very happy to have Dr. Rob Wottawa here with us today, and I think that all of you would agree that probably one of the most important things we do as school leaders is to mentor our new teachers successfully, to provide mentoring perhaps of different types. Mentoring doesn't just mean one thing, it means many different things. And to provide our new teachers with guidance and support of the variety that really helps them and helps them grow and be successful probably has a bigger impact on our schools than most other things. I mean, it really is at the core of what we do. So today we are very happy because we have a wide variety of roles represented here today. We have principals, assistant principals, directors, supervisors, assistant superintendents, CSE chairs, you name it. We're here. So I think it's pretty clear that this is a topic that really does resonate with us as school leaders. It's something we always want to get better at and kind of sharpen. So without any further delay, just to repeat a couple things, please do stay muted unless you want to ask a question or make a comment. And we're really going to want you to do that. We really want to hear from you. You'll also have opportunities to put things in the chat, but we love to actually hear your voice with a question or comment. And you will be able to access the recording of this session on the SAANYS website under Power Hours. And Dr. Wottawa is kind enough to also be sharing his slides with us. So we're going to post the slides with the recording on the website. And so with that, I am very happy to welcome Dr. Rob Wottawa. He is from the Huntington Union Free School District, and he is the Director of Fine and Performing Arts. And he also plays an important SAANYS role, which he will tell you about. So Rob has also been kind enough to join us in our meetings for our SAANYS mentors, and that has been very much appreciated. So Rob, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen, and I'm so pleased to be here. I was delighted to hear that we had over 105, I think 107 registrants. That is fantastic news. I'm going to share my screen and get right into it. In addition to doing all of the work that I do at my Huntington School District, like Karen just said, I'm also the SAANYS Region 1 chair, and I've been doing that work now for probably about 3 years, which has been outstanding and really wonderful. So, welcome to Mentoring Moments, our onboarding and hiring practices. And as we talked about, mentoring is so very, very important. And I truly believe that mentoring starts from the moment we begin introducing ourselves to our new teachers and our new people. Because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. So here's our agenda. I'll give you a quick overview of who I am, so you don't think I'm just some crazy person that SAANYS is picked on randomly. Some facts. I'm going to put a lot of questions, about 4 or 5 questions, into the chat, or actually right on the slides, and then you can respond into the chat. And I'd love to hear about 2 or 3 people, share out their thoughts, because it's so important to hear the voices of all the people that are in this room, because I come from the space that the question is, who's the smartest one in the room? The room. And there's a lot of expertise in this space, and I'm not the expert here. I just offer a different perspective, and I'm really excited to share that perspective. I'll then get into my mentoring model that I've written about in my book that will be coming out next year, talking about the hiring process, the onboarding process, and then we'll have some final takeaways and tips and some final questions. So with that, just really briefly, I began my career in Longwood as a general music teacher, became a band director, and then a chairperson. I was leading both art, facts, and music. I was then hired by East Islip School District, and I was the director of art, E&L, music, and world languages. And then I also became the DEI coordinator. So I have worn a lot of hats. And during that time, I've also been adjuncting at Five Towns College, LIU College, been teaching research methodologies, and my dissertation is in specifying in mentoring first year teachers to improve their first year experience as well as their first year of teaching and how to get them acclimated to schools. And in doing the work at East Islip for 10 years, I've developed a mentoring procedure and practices for new teachers. That's about a 4-year program. Today, we're not really going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the pre-work before that because we're talking about onboarding and hiring. And recently, I just started at Huntington Union Free School District, where I am the Fine and Performing Arts Director. And they have also asked me to take my work and put it through the entire school year for the new teachers of Huntington School District. So it is really exciting to be doing this work. And I'm excited to share this work with you. So the first question I'd like you to respond to is, why do we think onboarding and teacher retention is so important to our work? So I'll give you a couple moments to think about that question. Respond in the chat, and then Karen's going to share out some of the responses if she sees any questions, and then I would love to hear from some of you about that question. Now I have to give a little more wait time in the world of Zoom, so anyone's welcome to unmute and respond to this question. I have one comment here. It ultimately saves districts funding as we are not constantly hiring and training teachers. It's true. Expertise matters. Mentoring experience can build it. Connections, yes. Anybody else want to verbally share out their thoughts on this question? Why is onboarding so important to and retention of our new teachers? Yes, I love that response from Jason. Jason, my good friend, Jason Stanton from East Islip. The better the experience during the teach first years, the more inclined they're likely to stay. And I'm so glad that I read that of Jason's because that's the one of the main reasons why I do the work that I do with my new teachers. And the research that I've dug into is that 50% of teachers leave the job in the first 5 years. And we, of course, have a major teacher shortage. And why is that? So I had a student a couple of years ago that did a teacher job satisfaction survey. And the number one reason that teachers leave the job is relationships with supervisors. And when I learned that in 2021, I had to do full circle 180. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do to change that and build relationships with my new teachers so I can help them grow and be supportive? Because at the end of the day, yes, somebody had said it's all about connections, it's all about relationships, and it's so, so important. And my dissertation was about what is the first piece of advice that you give to new teachers, and it's never forget the impact that you have on the students' lives. There's that old quote that people say, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I talk about that regularly with my teachers because at the end of the day, we want our teachers to love kids. And I'm going to get into the questions that I asked during the screening interview. But before we get into that, I want to talk about what is mentoring to you? Because mentoring has a lot of different definitions. So I'd like to hear from some of you what you believe mentoring to be in the educational setting, because we hear about mentoring and coaching, and I believe there's a distinct difference, and people can argue both ways. But I'd love to hear from you about what is mentoring to you.
And as Rob said, you can put something in the chat and you can feel free to just unmute and comment.
Thank you, Todd. Todd, would you be willing to kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so to me, mentoring is um it's it's almost like thinking about our new teachers as the students who are in our classrooms. They come in with basic skills, and it's the job of the teacher to support and guide them as they build their skills at that specific grade level. So mentoring is that long-term commitment, whereas coaching, I don't want to say one and done, but it's much less, it's a lot less time.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you, Todd. Yes. Great. So, Gene, would you be willing to share a little bit more about that? Mentoring is helping teachers find their style and voice.
It's Jeannie
Ge-
Brunson.
Jeannie Brunson. Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, Jeannie may have stepped away for a minute. Let's look at a couple other comments. Regular one-to-one conversation, guidance, reflective dialogue, deep relationships and understanding of one another, and the support of the mentee is individualized. That's
So,
pretty different from the other kinds of support they get in the building as a group of new teachers, isn't it?
yes. So, and I'm gonna lean in a little bit to what Todd was talking about too. So, yeah, Todd was talking about how coaching is kind of like a one and done mentality. And in my own perspective, I've thought about doing a study on what is the difference between the two of them. And this is just my thought based on the work that I've done over the years. I believe mentoring is a one-to-one relationship with an individual where the mentor is really working to help the person become the best version of themselves so they can become the best teacher, the best leader, or whatever it might be, right? Now, of course, in that process, if you are mentoring a new teacher, you may watch them teach and you may do a little bit of coaching on their teaching on their teaching, right? But my true belief of coaching is the goal of coaching is to help the individual, but ultimately it's to help the individual to help the larger organization, right? Because when you talk about coaching, it's coaching a team, and the team is about or a business, and we want to bring more product, we want to bring more profit in. So you're helping that person get better at the things that they can do to help the organization grow. So you still care about the individual, but it's not that deep relationship that Gene was talking about, where mentorship is about that individual self relationship. You may get coffee with that person, go to lunch with that person, and chances are it would be almost a lifelong relationship. Think about some of the mentors that you have in your lives that you may have had. I know for myself, I have somebody that I'm thinking about in my mind right now, Red Owl, who is an amazing statistician. If I called him right now, he'd pick up the phone and we'd have a one-on-one chat. That's the difference between mentoring and coaching, in my personal opinion. And to talk a little bit more about that what Todd kind of touched upon, this is what I believe to be what I'm calling the mentoring cycle, right? So what happens in our world here is, and part of today's purpose is that we are all going to be meeting with new teachers. We are also working as people to hire new teachers, and then some of those new teachers may also eventually move into a leadership role to be able to understand that process, right? So Todd mentioned teaching, right? And my quote that I always say, so if you follow me on socials, is teachers are leaders and leaders are teachers. And what I mean by that is I use those terms synonymously. And it's an important part and I separate the word leaders and administrators. So when we start, we have a teacher and we have a great teacher, and oftentimes we'll tap that teacher on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I think you would be great at being an administrator." And they become an administrator and they're great at being a taskmaster. They're doing all the management things, right? It's the management versus leadership conversation. And eventually you hope that administrator starts to learn the relationship side, the mentoring side, the soft side, and starts to realize that being an administrator is really being a leader and then cultivating those relationships. Now you've developed yourself and now you've become a leader. And as you become a leader, you realize I'm hiring new teachers and I'm working with new people. And now all of a sudden, these new people, they need some help. They need some guidance. They need some mentoring. They need a teacher. So now as a leader, I become a teacher to the new teachers. So you can see that cycling goes all the way around in a big circle. And I feel like that's so important for us to recognize, going back to my quote, teachers are leaders and leaders are teachers. Because if we're doing the work authentically and we're getting in there and we're working with our new teachers, we're teaching them. And like we want our teachers all the time to differentiate to our students, we as leaders need to differentiate to our teachers. I was just listening to a podcast as I was driving home tonight that was talking about this, that, you roll out a new strategy, you roll out a new process, and we expect as administrators, right, that these teachers are all going to roll out that thing perfectly in the first year. Well, guess what? They're learning differently, just like the so we have to differentiate ourselves, differentiate our professional development, differentiate our mentoring, and all of those things, because at the end of the day, we are all teachers. So it's important that we are looking at this as we are teaching leaders to mentor our future, right? So here's some of the essential questions when we're talking about hiring and onboarding. And the question that I want to hone in on in the moment is because, again, the most important the person in the room is the room. So what are some onboarding and or mentoring practices that you've been seeing or you've been practicing or you have in place that work well for you or your school district? First, you work to acclimate the new staff into the district. That's great. How do you do that, Todd?
So we live in a very rural area, so we have in the past done bus tours of the news for the new staff so they can see actually the various socioeconomic status within our district. We give them a tour of the district facilities. We frame that through really a scavenger hunt at new teacher orientation.
That's
Um,
fun.
yeah, we we give a bit of the district's history, even though because we want to show them that we are steeped in tradition and our tradition is getting good results for our students and that we are forward thinking. So we always share with them our strategic plan and where we are in the develop or in the implementation of our strategic plan.
That's great. And as a teacher myself, I had that bus tour in my Longwood School District, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit of that in a little bit in a couple moments. But thank you for sharing. I really do appreciate that. And I think it's important, and I love that idea of a scavenger hunt. I'd love to hear more. Like if you would email me or share with me kind of some of the things that you do, because I think it's cool to engage them in the things that you do, and just like we want our students to be engaged, we want our teachers to be engaged. Really cool. Bus ride around the school district. We introduce staff to all buildings, biweekly meetings with new staff, review lessons, Danielson rubric, check in. Okay, that's great stuff. And I really do appreciate that from Jason. And I do something really similar to that. Jason and I worked together actually in East Islip, and we did a lot of things together. One of the things that I share about, and the reason I wanted to kind of talk about this question is, in New York State we have that required mentoring program. And some districts, the mentoring program is run by the teachers union. And, in other districts, it's run by the administrative team. In other districts, it's kind of just, ran cohesively, which is great. I've been in a place where it's run by both the administrative staff and also been by the union staff. And when you run it by certain people, you're giving them different lens of perspectives. So it's really important to understand, how your district is doing the mentorship, because those new teachers are getting a different lens. And if you are giving them one lens, maybe we should also offer the other lens. Because, it's oftentimes new teachers are going, well, what are my administrators expecting of me when they come in the classroom? And if they're getting a union lens, they're going to get something real different than from what we might want of them. I also like to say is that how many of you really believe that this New York State one and done mentoring program is enough, right? I see a lot of heads shaking, right? No, it's not. So if we really want to support our teachers, one of the things that I do is I meet bi-weekly with my teachers. And I think that's so very, very important to do that. And, I'm reading here through the regionalization process we went through last year, we identified the need, which is awesome. So you're sharing some, services within each other. And that's the other thing too, is the networking. All of us as a leadership team in this space right now, there's 31 of us, we could all sit down in a space and share great ideas and learn from each other and text each other or email each other and go to each other for questions. New teachers need to be able to do the same thing, and they need to have that ability to connect with one another. So let's go on to my unpacking of some of the things that I've developed over the years to really get to what I believe to be the meat of mentoringship right from the very beginning. So as I said earlier, it starts from the very beginning. And after a posting's been posted and we get the responses, I find it's really important to do screening. Now, I've done screenings of 25 people in a day where I'm spending a good 10 hours in front of a computer meeting with them. But I have to tell you, you can really get to know a person's personality within the first 5 minutes. And it's so important to do that, have that connection. And then after you do that, dwindling it down to about 10 people, now you have 10 people that you at least interacted with and you kind of have an understanding about them. And I want to talk about the questions that I use and why I use the questions. And I'd love your thoughts on this. So if you want to chime in, either share in the chat or unmute and just share it right away. One of the first things I like to ask, and this can be applied to new leaders as well. So if you are looking at hiring an assistant principal or principal, asking, why do you want to be a teacher at such and such a school district? So I work at Huntington. I will say, thank you so much for being here. The first question is tell me why you want to be a teacher at the Huntington Union Free School District, right? And what does that question give me? It gives me what that person values as a person, right? I'm sure some of you are in this space, have asked something similar to that, and you get, well, my mom and my dad were a teacher and I get the summers off and it's really nice to have that. And the salary is nice too. And you're going, not for me, right? It's quite interesting how people will answer this question and immediately will tell you what they value. I've had teachers that I really enjoy, and they'll be like, well, why do I want to be a teacher? I love kids. I can't tell you when I walk into a space and I want to see those kids light up. And let me tell you, I was on your website and I saw all the articles about what you do with kids. And now all of a sudden I'm like, hey, this candidate, not only do they love kids, they went on our website and they did a little bit of research on my district and they did it in a screening interview, which tells me that they want to be here. And whatever they might research, it could be a lot, it could be a little. It tells me something about them. It tells me that they care. It tells me that they want to be here with me. I've even had teachers that have heard about you as a person. I had one time I said, "Why do you want to be a teacher?" And here specifically, they answered the why first, and they said, "Dr. Wottawa, I've heard about how you mentor teachers, and I want to work with you." Like, that is an eye-opening experience when you know that what you're doing is going out to the community and it's going out to other teachers outside of your area. So let's transition to our second question. Second question. Can you share a story of a successful lesson and for a leader, it'd be a successful meeting? Now, this tells us what do they value as a teacher, right? So sometimes you'll hear this like really cool story of a teacher will share, and they'll be like, well, let me tell you. So the kids are going to be walking down the hallway, and I'm going to be standing in the hallway, and I'm going to be saying, what's your favorite pizza topping? And as they're walking in the door, I'm giving them high fives, and I, get them in the room, and I tell them to make sure they do look at the do now. And after they answer the do now, we talk about have a little quick on meeting. I want to say, how are you doing? What's a good thing that's going on? And what are some things, what they're doing a 2 minute meeting. And then we dive right into the lesson. I have them read the learning target out loud. And then we dive in and and they go into this great thing. Now all of a sudden you're like, hey, this teacher really values the relationships with kids. This teacher values learning targets. This teacher values engagement with the students. And I've had other teachers that will say something very mechanical, like, well, typically my students will come into the room, they will, read the learning targets, we'll unpack those learning targets, and then we'll get into the lesson. Sometimes the lesson's like this. And you as a leader go, do I value that? Is that our district? And sometimes that's perfectly fine. But it gives you a personality of the person, especially when you ask them to tell the story about a specific lesson that they've taught. It also gives you the perspective of have they done this before besides student teaching? And sometimes student teaching does offer them quite a bit of experience. And they had a cooperating teacher that lets go of the reins, and they really were controlling the classroom. And you get a really cool story from a candidate. And now you're in that moment of like, I really want to know more about this person, and you're excited about the person. And my final question is something about research. So the recent one I've been asking is, please explain how you'd integrate SEL into your lesson or into your vision for a leader, right? And sometimes you'll get, a lot of the times, SEL. Oh yeah, so when a student has an IEP, students are going to do blah 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 blah. So I go, okay, so you don't know what SEL is, but you're not going to tell me that you don't know what SEL is. So this is the moment of, are these people that we're interviewing, are they mentorable? Are they willing to learn? I've had people that nail it right on the head. Oh, SEL, social emotional learning, and this is what it's about, right? And then they unpack it. Then I've had people go, what is SEL? I have no idea. And that's the person that you go, great, at least they admitted to it. And now I know that they're not maybe up to date with the trends, but they're willing to learn about the new trends that are out there. And they are mentorable and teachable, which is so important for new teachers because we know we love going into a classroom, we love doing the observations, and we love when they say, how can I get better? Right? And this question really, really sets us up. So they're telling us they want to get better, and we're beginning the mentoring process right then and there. So before I move on, I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on these questions, um, out loud or in the chat. Feel free to unmute and talk away. It's always good to hear other voices besides mine.
Jean, can you talk about how you have teachers work with you on developing teacher orientation? Just unmute. It should be fine. You're still muted, Jean. There you go.
I've always
Okay.
set up a committee where I have teachers volunteer to plan what kinds of training we think would be valuable and then even participate in it. So if we're leading a group of people in an activity to learn about how to do cooperative groups or cooperative teaching, then I have teachers working with me as a partner doing cooperative presentations. And I've always felt that's been significant because new teachers feel really comfortable then. They say, these people value the teachers. So maybe they'll value me. Maybe I'll be able to find a place for myself in this environment. So I think that's important. I do
I
like
love.
the three questions, by the way, that you shared. And I like to share another one. And I always ask for a successful story, but I also like to ask for something that was a big challenge.
Yes.
Because my most favorite answer to that came from a teacher who is now really an administrator, and I think he's just going to be a new principal. And he said, "Well, I like a challenge because when I'm in the middle of my challenge, I always like to ask for feedback so I can get better, at it." And it was so powerful answer to see his humility and to see how he comes out of a challenge looking for the next step to do it right or do it better. So,
I love that. I love that, Gene. That question is, I don't really talk about it today, but the committee meetings, where you have the group of teachers that come to the next round of the interviews, that's usually when that question comes up. So tell us about a challenge that you face and how you
yeah,
overcome that challenge. But here's a really cool question that we always have parents on the committee, right? And this question always stumps people. It always stumps them. So this is the question. So in about 10 minutes, you're going to be driving home from this interview. And as you're driving home, you're going to go, man, I really wish that I said dot, dot, dot. Here's the floor. Tell me what you're going to be thinking as you're driving home. And they're
that's
always
it.
like, oh my goodness, and that came from a parent, and I use that all the time now, at the end of the interview, and it's such a cool question. The other question I also love to throw out at the new people in the middle of and not in the this type of setting, but is tell me what you're reading right now. You know,
Yep. Who do you follow?
yeah, who do you follow? Yeah, with social media world. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
thanks.
I like to hear they follow an educator, you
Yes,
know.
of
Uh,
course.
yeah. In addition to other. Thank
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So
you.
yeah, it's great. So so we talked about the next step, of course, would be that committee round of interview. And let's say now we went through that process, and now we're at the point where we are the person is at the point where they're board approved, and now we're like, now what do we do with them, right? And it's kind of like there's a podcast I was talking about right now is about bringing people back together, right? This is the time of year in April and May, and if you want to roll anything out in September, it's too late to roll it out in August. You got to start rolling it out now. So with that being said, when you have these new teachers, they got board approval. What are you going to do with them? You're going to wait until September to see them? No. What I do is after board approval, end of June, if you can. I used to have a department that used to love meeting with them during Regents Week and have the new teachers come in for lunch at the pizza place. And what they would do is I'd invite them to my office in June or July, usually the end of June. They come to my office. The first question I would say to them, what questions do you have for me? And right away, the notebook comes out, and they have a whole slew of questions for me. And I'm able to answer those questions as best as I can, give them curriculum maps, give them what some of the expectations are, talk about how I'm going to be mentoring them. And then to go a little further with the bus tour, I used to take them into my truck and drive them around the district and show them to each building, talk about each building, and then take them out of the truck into their own building, walk them to their classroom, open up the classroom, show them where their materials are, let them take pictures, let them understand where they're going to be. Then we get back in the truck, talk about the local pizza places, the bagel places, all the things that we are. I always say it's the small things that make a big difference, right? They want to know where the cool places to eat are. So tell them about where the cool places to eat are. Show them the quick ways to get to building. And then we used to meet up with my staff, and they would have pizza at the pizza place, and have that wonderful time. And when I had that time with them and answered all their questions and said to them, set up protocols like, look, you're going into the summer. You may have questions over the summer, and that's okay. Here's my cell phone number. Call me, text me, email me. I want to help you. I want to support you. And the responses that I've gotten from teachers that have gone through this with me, when I ask them what was most helpful about this process, they always say, Rob, it was so great that we met at the beginning of June or the beginning of July, because now the entire summer is not a waste. I'm not walking in going, what am I supposed to do? What are the expectations? What is a lesson plan format supposed to look like? Where is my email? All of those things that are the basic questions. And they feel so much more comfortable moving into the district. And of course, I introduced them to their building principal, and I talk about the process in which they want to come in over the summer to get their room set up, because they always want to know about those things right away. So before we jump into the next question, I know we talked about the district tour. What are some of your initial thoughts of having that conversation and in 3 months before the school year starts?
Mm, good.
Actually, Rob, that's one reason why I think this is really good timing to have this particular power hour too,
Yes.
because it is time for people, and I know everybody's wheels are already turning, in terms of what some of their goals are for the summer, things to really work on getting set up for the next school year. So this is very timely. Right, not the end of August. Thanks.
Right. Yeah. The podcast that I listened to was Darren Pepper, and he talked about alignment, and how when you talk to leaders and you say, we're going to roll out this thing, we're all going to be rowing in the same direction. When do we roll this out? And a lot of people will be like, well, August, well, September conference day. And it's like, no, 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 you're going to roll that out and nobody's going to get it. So if you have an alignment plan, work on it in August, I'm sorry, in April, and then roll it out in May. So this way they can think about it in the summer and integrate it into their lessons. And then when they start in September, we're all rowing in the same direction. It's the same kind of concept here with these new teachers. We talked about the expectations, we gave them the lesson plans, we showed them where their space is, and we said, the 2 weeks before school starts, you can get into your classrooms, and setting all those expectations and having those conversations and building those relationships is so huge, because, they walk away and they go, I feel like Rob cares about me. And that's so huge. So thank you, Marie. Love those ideas. Dot Holly, we begin this in the early summer with pizza on the patio. I love it on our pizza, and it's helped our new staff connect with each other. Yeah, it's huge. When you build those connections with one another as well. I know in my previous district, they used to have the new teachers would all get together in their sessions, and kind of get to know each other as new teachers, which is a wonderful experience. And I'll share with a story with you is that at that time, I was in charge of 4 different departments, and I happened to hire like 7 different teachers, which is pretty impressive, pretty busy. And so October happens, and I get a phone call from the vice president of the teachers union, because the vice president of the teachers union is the one that's in charge of the mentoring program. And she's like, Rob, what are you doing with the teachers? I'm like, well, I don't know, I'm meeting with them like I always do. She's like, every single one of them are like, we met with Rob and we talk about this. I met with Rob and I did that. And my other teachers are like, we want some of that. So, building those relationships early on is really, really helpful. It sets that growth mindset. It sets that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to take risks and all of those things. So before we wrap things up here, I know that Karen wants to share some things as well. I want to share some contacts as well. These are some final tips and takeaways. These are some overarching questions. How can we best support teachers and leaders that are new? Question that I want to hear about is, what onboarding and or mentoring strategies that we talked about today are you walking away with? I'd love to hear more about that, because that's going to help me become a better teacher and a better leader myself. And I'd love to hear from you. And then, of course, how do we cultivate relationships when we're working with our new people? So I'd love to hear what you're walking away with. We have onboarding starts with the board approval. Love it. Thank you.
And Rob, I only need 1 minute at 5 o'clock, so don't worry about.
Yeah. Thank you, Marie. Good, insightful questions. Yes. Yeah. One of the
I
things that
think I
got,
think I think relationships start with listening. And when a new teacher is asking to really be present and listen to that question, because embedded in that question are lots of things. Sometimes what they're anxious about, sometimes what they know a lot about, and you can really help them move forward.
yeah, Gene, you were reminding me one of the things I always say to my teachers, and I say it all the time, born with 2 ears and one mouth, so listen twice as much as you speak. It helps me to remember the multiplication. I had a keynote speaker that even said you listen with your eyes. So,
Yeah.
so like that, I'm like, okay, so we should be listening 5 times as much as we speak. So I love this. Thank you, Gene, making space for mistakes and growing relationships. I also want to share that during my first initial meeting with brand new teachers, after I asked the question, you know, what questions do you have? I shared with them specifically what my intent is, why I am doing this. I say to them, look, teachers, leave the profession in the first 5 years, and it's because of relationship with supervisors. I don't want to lose you. We spent a lot of time already investing in you. I'm going to pour into you as much as I possibly can, and I want to support you through your growth process. And like Jean just said, I want to listen to all the things that you have because we are growing together. Because just as much as I'm going to pour into you, you're going to pour into me because you have great new ideas as well. And I feel like when you come to the table as a partner in learning, it shifts the perspective for all of the people that are in the space. And I love to do that with our new staff. And I have my program is meet with them for the first 2 years every other week. And then I transition them for the 3 years and 4 years once a month to guide them towards tenure, so they feel successful and they can move towards success in their school district. So,
I have a question. So,
sure.
and just when I thought of the question, you kind of answered it, and that is just the format. When you talk about the mentoring program in terms of one of the school leaders like you mentoring teachers, just tell us again, what does it look like? How often? For how long? And my other thought was, do teachers also have a teacher mentor assigned to them as well as an administrative mentor?
So my program, if you will, has been self-generated, right? So the both districts I've worked in, the teachers have a teacher mentor that's assigned to them, and I take it upon myself to provide the leader lens for the teachers. And what I do is, like I said, I had that meeting in the beginning of the summer, set up the mentor meetings, and it's a 4-year program. The first 2 years is bi-weekly. And in that, I go through the Danielson rubric. I also use the book Leaders of Their Own Learning, and I unpack strategies of teaching. I try to build their tool belts up. And after the 2 years, because we have the 4-year tenure track, I move them to once a month. So for year 3 and year 4, I meet with them once a month. And by that time, the other thing that's interesting is, the teachers that are mentoring them only have them for a year. Imagine the relationship that I'm building with them if I've met with them for 4 years. And I had one of my presidents of the union come to me once and say, like, the teachers are coming to you before they're coming to us. And in one breath, they appreciated that because they weren't getting all of the questions. But on the other side of that, they're kind of like, we kind of want them to come to us first. So it was great to know that when they were making mistakes or they had authentic questions, that they felt more comfortable coming to me than they felt with going to their union leadership, which I think is tremendous. So thanks for that question, Karen. It's super helpful to know the process in which we follow to support our teachers. So I'm going to
I
just
think that
go ahead.
I think the support that you've offered is extraordinary, and I think a lot of us have done that and continue. The thing I find very interesting is that the more successful that teacher is in his or her first year, the better the kids experience. We always say the teacher can learn and grow and all that, but what about those kids that are in first grade? They only do that once.
Right.
So that new teacher, I want that new teacher 100%, 150% successful as best we can get because I got, there are children there and
Yeah.
they don't get another crack at first grade.
Oh, yeah, you're right. And I
So
always say
there's a
say
nice
that
benefit too.
yes, yes. It's all about relationships, and be like the video of Rita Pearson, let's be a champion of children, and the kids are never going to learn from somebody they don't like. So go out there and build those relationships with kids immediately because that's the important part. So I'm gonna wrap it up and thank all of you for your time. I like to